Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolutely epic evolution of Justin Gaethje and the genius-level strategies he's crafted with his brilliant coach, Trevor Wittman. Seriously, we're looking at a masterclass in how a fighter goes from pure, unchecked aggression to becoming a highly calculated, world-class champion.
Wow, I am the effing champion. It's absolutely incredible. We're going to start right at the peak, with Gaethje's surreal disbelief at finally capturing a world title. After the dust settled, sitting quietly days later, the reality finally hit him. 19 years after his dad dropped him off in Colorado to wrestle, knowing absolutely no one, he had reached the absolute pinnacle of his sport as a massive underdog. But getting there? Well, that required navigating one of the most unpredictable environments imaginable. Section 1. The White House War. Controlled chaos on a historic stage.
Okay, let's jump right into the climax of this whole journey. A historic title fight right at the White House. This wasn't your standard run-of-the-mill arena setup, guys. It was a completely alien environment. The conditions were pure, unadulterated chaos. We're talking severe 70% humidity that just sucked the oxygen right out of the air. Then you had thunderstorms forcing massive rain delays, leaving them trapped in a locker room for hours. And then came the walkout, walking right past the Oval Office, taking in the Declaration of Independence, and stepping out to the deafening roar of an 85,000-plus crowd. And get this, Gaethje entered this arena as a staggering 6-1 underdog against a phenomenal opponent. Overcoming massive odds like that takes way more than just wild brawling. It demands absolute composure, especially in the second round when his opponent unloaded literally everything in a desperate attempt to finish the fight. To survive a storm like that, Gaethje had to completely rewrite his fighting DNA. Section 2. From Brawler to Tactician, the Evolution of Strategy. So, you might be wondering, how exactly does Gaethje transform from a guy who just wanted to be the most violent fighter in the cage into a highly calculated champion? It was a deliberate, agonizing shift orchestrated by Coach Wittman after back-to-back brutal losses. Originally, Gaethje's goal was literally just to be the most excited fighter fans had ever seen. He didn't even care about getting hit. But Wittman sat him down and bluntly asked, "Do you want to be a champion?" To win gold, that destructive ferocity had to be channeled into smart, tactical execution. He had to learn how to fight in designated spots. Which brings us perfectly to Wittman's pacing philosophy. And honestly, this is a principle you could apply to almost anything in life. You simply cannot redline an engine forever. The system is simple but incredibly hard to execute under pressure. Sprint for 50 yards, pull back and jog for 100 yards to recover, and then sprint again. It's all about knowing your physical redline and pacing your output, rather than sprinting until your tank is completely hopelessly empty. In the actual fight, we saw this philosophy tested flawlessly. His opponent made a massive tactical error. Smelling blood in the second round, Ilya totally ignored the red line. He sprinted full out, throwing with 100% power for 2 solid minutes, and just completely exhausted himself. Gaethje, on the other hand, stuck to the script. He limited his explosions to 20 to 40-second strategic sprints. That immense patience preserved his energy for the tactical finish later in the fight. And that disciplined energy, it translates seamlessly into physical mechanics. Gaethje capitalized on his opponent's aggressive, front-heavy stance by constantly slide-stepping his left foot outside of Ilya's rear foot. By actively changing the angle and getting outside the shoulder, Gaethje took away his opponent's power while setting up his own devastating, perfectly timed right-hand counters. It was a literal tactical masterclass. Section 3. Mastering the Mental Game, Extreme Accountability. But here's the thing. Elite physical strategy only works if the mind running the machine is unbreakable. How does someone process the extreme highs and devastating lows of combat without their ego shattering? Consider this intense scenario for a second. How do you think a competitor should mentally process getting knocked unconscious in the absolute final second of a brutal, grueling, multi-round war? For most people, that would be an excuse-making nightmare. Astonishingly, as Gaethje regained consciousness in the back of an ambulance after a devastating loss to Max Holloway, his first reaction when told what happened wasn't anger, it wasn't denial at all. He simply said, "Good for him." Over and over again, as his memory was rebooting, his repeated response was to praise his opponent. It's just an unbelievable display of pure character. This reaction perfectly highlights a core trait ingrained from his youth wrestling days: extreme accountability. Gaethje takes absolute responsibility for his personal success and his failures. Zero room for excuses. If the better man wins that night, he accepts it entirely. This lack of a fragile ego is actually his greatest mental weapon, because it allows him to learn, adjust, and immediately move forward. It's a mindset we could all learn a thing or two from, for sure. Section 4. The weight cutting crisis, systemic industry flaws.
Now, if we zoom out from the individual mindset for a minute, this dynamic duo also sheds light on some severe systemic issues within combat sports as a whole. And it starts with the dangerous, widely accepted practice of extreme weight cutting. The culture of cutting massive amounts of water right before a fight is causing terrifying hidden damage, severe brain dehydration, total nutrient depletion, and sudden late fight exhaustion. Coach Wittman is incredibly passionate about this, arguing that this practice dramatically increases a fighter's vulnerability to catastrophic knockouts. Training the body to artificially drop 15 to 20 pounds of water leaves athletes incredibly vulnerable. As Wittman notes, just like your lips crack when they're dry, stripping the fluids away from the brain fundamentally alters its physical ability to absorb impact. It's a massive, dangerous flaw in the sports ecosystem. Section 5. Fixing the glove problem, engineering better combat. The second massive issue they tackle is purely mechanical, a fundamental design flaw in standard mixed martial arts gloves. But Trevor Wittman didn't just complain about it, he engineered a solution. Notice the mechanics going on here. Standard MMA gloves are stiff and naturally force the fingers into an open position. That means the fighter has to actively exert forearm muscle just to keep a fist closed, causing immense fatigue before a single punch is even thrown. Wittman's design uses thicker leather and is pre-curved, keeping the hand naturally relaxed and dramatically reducing that early fatigue. Now, you might be thinking about the sport's notorious eye poke dilemma, where some suggest a mitten-style cover. But Gaethje explains that fully covering the fingers completely ruins the intuitive tactile reads needed during grappling. You literally need your bare fingertips to feel those micro movements when an opponent shifts their weight. So while eliminating eye pokes entirely might be impossible without fundamentally changing the sport, redesigning the glove's curve primarily prioritizes the athlete's hand comfort, stamina, and safety. Section 6. Conclusion: the legacy of controlled chaos.
To wrap up this explainer, Justin Gaethje's journey is just a profound masterclass. It's the story of taking savage, almost uncontrollable physical instinct and binding it with elite, unwavering discipline. He truly embodies the classic man in the arena. Gaethje completely accepts the chaos of his profession, tunes out all that digital noise and petty hatred from sideline critics, something we could probably all practice a bit more of, and strives purely for competitive perfection. Which leaves us with this final, critical thought to ponder. Every weekend, we watch these incredible masterminds navigate controlled chaos inside the cage, pushing the absolute limits of human endurance for our entertainment. But if athletes like Gaethje are constantly evolving their minds and bodies to survive, when will the sport itself finally evolve its rules and equipment to properly protect them? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. See you next time.